usables for us started in the lead up to last year's CitizenCon. We kind of realized that, we have a lot of seats in the game, and the only type of seats available to us were the pilot seats. Pilot seats are complicated. You don't want to say like, oh, it's a park bench, or it's, a bench in the mess hall, or a bed. You don't want to say like that has the same attributes as a pilot seat. We wanted to create something simpler. So we came up with this idea, which was just, it's just a simple seat. It's super, super lightweight and easy to mass produce. So we started with that. Then it kind of grew into to also incorporate other things, like the first actual test case of this simple seat, which meant we had to change the name. Really, was the hacking laptop in Star Marine. So there's no seat involved at all. So it became more like a usable, something you can use, and when you use it, it plays an animated reaction on the player. And there might be multiple ways you can use it. So you have the whole inner thought on top of it. So you can select like, I want to hack the laptop. I want to close the laptop. Maybe someone closed it. Now I need to open it first. All that kind of complex behavior.
So in a game world, it's like talking to babies, right? When I tell you sit on a chair, you know how to sit on a chair because you've done that 1,000 times. But what happens in the game world is that the AI needs to actually ask the chair how it is supposed to use it. So it's like the chair needs to hold the data of, you can sit from all those different angles. You can use those animations to do so. When you are actually sitting, you can play this, and that stuff. If you're sitting and I'm attached to a table, you can pick up stuff that's on the table. But then again, when you are sitting on a chair, you know that there's something on the table and you just pick it up. The AI has no conscience of that. So you need to tell the AI to basically, you're on a chair that's linked to a table. And so the table tells you, I also have a glass on me. And the AI then has to know that it can pick it up. But basically we're remapping all the way our brain are hardwired for the AI step by step. So all that seems trivial is actually something that we need to take care of. So it's like remapping every conscious choice linked to walking. So you're putting your foot up, putting your foot forward, putting your foot down, putting your other foot up, and you basically need to tell the AI to do all of those stuff one by one instead of just relying on its ability to just, do what it's supposed to do because there's no such concept. So after the failure, we basically realized that we needed the angle of the other discipline in a more involved way than we have had up till now. So coming from the UK studio in the Jens Lind team, we were joined by Jamie Visser, who is a gameplay programmer. We started working on the improvement of the workflow and how the animation and geometry of the usable were processed in the pipeline. And we got a few updates in that were actually speeding up the pipeline so much, such as all the alignment around the usable that I talked about. We actually read that from the animation, so you don't need all of this heavy, clunky markup, which basically sped up the art process so much. And from Austin, we were working with Brian Brewer, which was helping us from the start in the first installation and kept doing so, creating some kind of triangle of people coming at this system from all of their angle and trying to covering all the bases and all the cases that we needed. So we were able to basically optimize the pipeline for everyone because one of each discipline was involved. With CitizenCon, there was some requests that we didn't see coming, such as all the repair and maintenance interaction aboard an Idris, for example, meaning you have to take component out of certain parts of the ship, inspect them, replace them, carry them around. And all of that was not ready the first time we tried to do all that. And so basically what we realized is that the system has to be request-based and be able to kind of cater to all of those new requests that were coming in. So we created a whole process where people can actually request usables. We created a way to basically categorize those requests and identify what were stuff that we could already do, and that would go through the pipeline easily, and stuff that we actually had to build some tech for. And coming out of CitizenCon, there was a lot of stuff that we needed tech for. So once the team was actually created, it was really easy to pick from those and actually just go and go, okay, let's lift that blocker, let's lift that blocker, let's lift that blocker, and just go for it.
So the first time you have seen a usable is the hacking panel. Then we've kind of moved on. We also converted the MediPen dispenser. That's going to be a usable, hopefully in the next release. So we're slowly kind of growing like the players' interaction with the usable. And then at the start of this year, designers wanted to use the usables for AIs as well. So we started this whole new sprint paradigm where we're working like with design, we're working with prop teams, we're working with the animators, everyone together in a task force that's going to grow this kind of AI actors interacting with things in the world in lots and lots of different ways. So the first case we had was the mess hall table. So we had a single big usable, like a long mess hall with 8 different actors could potentially sit at the same time. If you choose to eat together like a family, they could all sit there at the same time. So that was the first thing we had to do. We had to take the usables, which up until now was a single entry point, like a single actor could use it, and we had to make sure that all of these 8 actors could potentially use it at the same time. They can do different things in it, so we'd have to grow the idle sets. So we don't want them all to sit exactly uniform. We want them to be allowed to have a small offset, play different animations. So that's another thing that was added. Every place on a mess table is slightly different. Like you can't use the same animation necessarily to get to sit at the end bit of a bench as you would when you sit in the middle of the bench. You actually got more entry points if you're coming in from the side of something than if you're coming in from behind it as well. So to make it feel natural, you don't want someone to have to walk around the table in order to get to the end. You want them to be able to use the shortest path like any human would. And the ones that get on it as well is the whole sort of, what do they do when they're at the mess table? I mean, if there's 8 of them, how do you break it up so it doesn't feel like they're literally just lined up in 4 slots on each side, doing the exact same things, playing through the exact same sequences? Like, how do you make it feel natural? And as well as getting off, like, you want to make sure that when you come out of a usable, you don't always go out the same way. You don't always go out behind you and then set off in your new direction. You might go off like slightly to your left or slightly to your right, because that's where you want to go next. And then I think the complexity, if you take the mess hall as an example, there's the table, there's things on the table, right? There might be a glass, there might be a plate. You need to eat while you're using a usable, while using the usable, you're actually using another thing on top of it. So there's this stacking behavior that kind of grew this feature beyond the original. I mean, if you look at the hacking laptop, it's just a case of get in there, hack for a certain amount of time, then player might choose to cancel the hack, and say like, okay, I've interrupted it. Or the laptop itself says, well, you've finished the hack. This usable interaction is no longer available to you, so you need to stop using it, which means you would play the exit. So it's a simple like entry animation leads to like a looping idle where you're doing something because of the interaction you've chosen, and then you can either choose to exit it because you don't want to do it anymore, you want to cancel the interaction, or the usable itself says, well, you can no longer do this. So now you need to play the exit. So you had sort of entry, idle, exit. But then when you come to AI, they might want to do lots of things when they're using the usables, because of the stacking behavior. I mean, the same could be true for something as simple as the laptop. You might go onto it. You might go like, okay, I go up to my laptop. I've said I want to hack it, so I'm going to hack it. But then I'm going to go like, oh, actually, I don't want to hack it. I just want to destroy it because my hack failed. So I choose like the destroy option. And I happen to bring a glass of water with me and just pour it over the laptop. Off I go, and then it's destroyed, and I'm no longer allowed to use it. There's nothing you can use here. It's a destroyed object. I think the code to destroy it would be, instead of in the item 2.0 world, that would be another component. This is a destructible object, so if it describes it, and then and it's up to the usable to link an interaction that says, I want to destroy it, play the suitable animation, and then at some point in that animation trigger the destruction behavior. The idea is that this usable component is like the glue between like what you can do and what happens when you do them. How do we make the usables feel more real and natural? I mean, a lot of that comes down to having variation in the animation. So to begin with, we had kind of cumbersome. Like if you look at the entry alone, we had a setup which was like, you would say, right, here's the usable. We have 5 animations. So for each animation, we say this animation starts here, this animation starts here, this animation starts here, and so on. And then in data, you would have to say, okay, we set up this point here, we link that to this animation, and then the AI will choose the one that's most natural based on where it's moving from and which direction it's coming in from, and try to sort of get a really nice natural motion into the usable. But of course, we realized quite quickly that wouldn't really scale, because now you're going to have to, if you want to create another one, there's another data point, and then you're going to have to do that for every single usable. That's a lot of data you have to set up.
We basically approach the problem from 2 angles, which is we need this quality of animation, this fidelity, and that this basically we need it to look good and feel alive. That's one thing, and we're getting closer and closer to that, getting it just right. But the other thing is we're going to have to build like 1,000 of usables to populate all the outposts, all the landing zones, some inside ships, on planets and such, inside all of the levels of Squadron 42. We can't afford for it to be too heavy on production. We need to optimize the process. We need it to be actually fast. So we're actually trying to get all the good stuff without any of the bad stuff, which is we need it to look good, but we need it to go fast. We need it to be smart, but we need it to not take too much time of too much people and be too expensive on production. And we need it to be able to basically, if someone requests a usable, if he gets it the day after, then my job is done.
So what we're doing instead is we're just saying like, okay, give us all the entry animations, and then give us just like a big group of animations, and then we just extract the movement from those animations, and we'll build up the entry points from that. Validated points, because you don't want to be able to enter a usable by going through another usable or through another person, or if it's outside the navigation mesh, then AI wouldn't be able to find a path to it. So we can remove all these dynamic points, re-add them however we want, really. And if someone wants to add a new entry point or a different style of entry, they just put it in there, and it builds the data dynamically. And the more variation we have there, I mean, already you're going to get a much more natural style. Like you might have like a way to sprint into a usable, or just walk into a usable, as well as like getting to it from like the other side, whichever feel more natural and gives you that variation as well, because each animation will have its own little sort of unique style. So you can have the same usable. You can be looking at 5-6 AIs using it, and every time they're playing a slightly different animation getting in there. And then once you're in the usable itself, having variations in how you look while you're doing that, it's another great way to give it more life. So making sure that there's not just a single style of sitting, but lots of different styles, and give it variations. As if they're staying on a seat for a long time, make sure they're constantly shifting around, fidgeting a bit, settling into a new pose. We're hoping anyway that will give it a more natural look. And another big thing is, of course, making sure that while if you're looking specifically at the seated usable, making sure that the upper body is still available, and they can do things like they can glance around. If the player comes into view, they can maybe look at him or just acknowledge someone else walking past them, even though they're busy playing what should be a usable interaction.
One of the things that the usable has been through is this process of actually failing once, which I'm smiling about, but was actually painful. But the good thing, though, is that it just highlights how iterative the process is, especially when we're trying to push the envelope to do something new and something fresh, something that has never been done before. We're doing that, we have to try things, and we have to, sometimes take things out that we thought worked and didn't, and take new things in that we thought weren't necessary and actually were. And so what really has been good with the usable is that following this first failure, we adopted a really more fluid approach where we try something, we review it, we put it to the best of, put it through its pace a little bit, and if it doesn't work, we change to something else. And we just try to cover every problem that is thrown our way, not one by one, but as one system, trying to make it evolve to cover everything rather than try to extend it over and over until it crumbles.
From sort of looking at the sprint teams have achieved, but the biggest breakthroughs have been, I think the biggest one really for me personally was when we were able to get rid of the alignment slot. So not having to say this is an entry point, this is the animation it plays, but being able to just say, here is a group of animations that will let you get into this usable. You can dynamically build all the data you need in order to select which one is best for your current situation. And likewise, doing the same on the way out to say hey, I'm going to exit this seat, or I'm going to stop hacking now and I'm going to go left. Just making sure a small thing like that, just making sure that the exit is already taking him in the direction that he's now going to move. It's just such a massive advantage to how you scale this and give it sort of the fidelity that it needs. But then other things is, obviously we try to use IK where possible to allow someone to be slightly out of alignment. So you don't have to sit perfectly on a seat. You don't have to get perfect onto the hacking console, but it's constantly allowing a little bit of fix up in the extremities. So if your hand needs to reach a cup, make sure that we're not forcing you to be perfectly aligned with that cup, that cup can be off by a bit. It could be rotated slightly differently, and we can use a bit of IK to get the correction in the hand to sort of make the reach feel natural and look natural, and just try to reduce snappiness wherever possible. We use the same when positioning as well. If we need something to be quite exact, we always try to average the correction out over a longer period of time, so that you don't see that kind of. If it's 5 centimeters out, you don't want one frame to say now fixing by 5 centimeters, because it will always 60 frames a second. A 5 centimeter leap in one frame will be noticeable. So if you can kind of smooth that out. Try to make it as data-driven as possible. Give the designers the ability to say, right, do the positional smoothing over this amount of time. Same with the IK, right, when do we start the IK? We've got two types of IK we try to use. We got animation-driven IK, which is in the control of the animator. The animator says, right, you can use this IK. First of all, they can say whether you can use it or not, and then they can also blend it in and out over time. We use that a lot for weapons, if you want to reload a weapon, your left hand has to come off the weapon, but you don't want to snap it down to the magazine. You want it to, gradually come down. But you might not know where it is, because you might hold the weapon differently because you installed some kind of custom attachment on it that wasn't there in the original animation. So we'd already had to offset your hand to grip it correctly. And the other type of IK is more of a sort of design-driven IK, where they can kind of go right, at this point in the animation, I want him to start reaching from this point, this cup, this part of his face, if he needs to salute, fix up a little bit, where the hand goes. And that's more done as a layer on top of animation. So you have the animation, and then you have the data from the designer saying, how are we going to blend this in? How are we going to blend it back out? And what hand is moving, and where is it moving to?
What is actually interesting with the usable team in a more human kind of aspect is we have basically, I'm a member here in Frankfurt. We have Jamie over in the UK, and Jens's team is actually lending hands a lot in the UK. Ben Curtis is working on props and on geometry and is often lending us its hand from the UK also, but we're also working with Brian Brewer over in Austin, so in the US.
Today we happen to be doing a pickup shoot for our usable system. We're going to be doing things like opening the door. We just finished our door metrics and figuring out what we need for that. The toilets, we finally have settled on toilet metrics. So we have captured a couple little moves that we need to flush out our toilet system. I couldn't help it. We do little impromptu shoots like this in order to capture the little bits and pieces that we've been realizing that we need with research and development. We have something that we've been capturing called transitions. They're little animations that help us transition from one animation to the next. What this allows us to do is anytime we have a big shoot at Imaginarium Studios, or if we set up our full system, we have these little transitions that will help us get into and out of those in particular motions.
Some of the usables are quite complex in that if we want to keep interaction sequence. So we might want to say, like, take the tray, for example. We want to say that when you go up to use the tray dispenser, you actually do the full sequence. So you go up, you get a tray, you get a cup, you get a plate, you get a knife and fork, and that's one big animation. But during that one big animation, he's actually going to have to become owner of a cup, become owner of a plate, become owner of a fork, become owner of a knife, then release ownership of all of those. And there might be IK as well, because, what if he didn't step all the way up, or he came up in a slight angle. So every time he's touching one of those items, we might want to do a small arcade animation-driven or procedural fix-up to reach that item. It's where you draw the line, right? The whole idea is that with the usables is that you shouldn't have to. They should be so scalable that unless we reach a point where we're going like, right, we're taking it too far now, this is going to take too long to support, let's scale it back and let's simplify this. But as long as you can describe it in data for the code, it hopefully shouldn't be that much different.